This is the design of the terraced houses, just to give you an idea. There's some balconies to the front. And then this is one of the detached house types. This one has a gable feature at the front. And then another of the detached house types, which is a bit more simpler in appearance. Facing materials are natural stone and artificial slate. In terms of the assessment, the principle of development is accepted in accordance with the land's allocation. The density of the development is on the light side when applying the council's minimum target density of 35 dwellings per hectare, although the proposed density reflects that of Riverhome View. The overall design approach is considered to be appropriate by officers, and acceptable separation distances are provided to neighbouring properties. The recent amendment to the site layout has removed the objection from the Environment Agency. It has also addressed ecological issues because the provision of a large undeveloped area provides scope for biodiversity mitigation and enhancement. There are no objections from Highways and the lead local flood authority. And in conclusion, the application is considered to be acceptable and is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
We have one speaker, Sir Hamish Gledhill.
Thank you, Chair. I don't say too much more. I think the officer's report covers most of the issues, but just briefly, just want to remind members that there's an indicative layout that accompanied the outline planning application for this site that showed 14 houses comprising 6 semi-detached houses and 8 detached units. We provided a far more spacious scheme, less intensive scheme that responds to the constraints of the site and reflects more the character of the area. We've taken note of the public comments, most of which relate to the size of the original proposal, impact on residential amenity and traffic implications, and have worked with the planning officer to find what we believe to be an acceptable solution, which provides a mix of house types with plot sizes that reflect the surrounding area. We've tried to mitigate the visual impact of the proposed development, particularly to the campsite to the south, by keeping the houses further up the slope as far from the boundary as possible. And in Highways terms, the proposed development provides a less intensive use of the site than the outline permission for 14, which I've mentioned previously. We believe the proposal in front of you today provides an efficient and effective use of the site that has a minimal impact on residential amenity and reflects the character of the area. You'll see from the committee report that there are local residents in support of the scheme, and I respectfully ask you to support this application. Thank you.
Members.
Yeah, it's good.
Councillor Davies, yeah.
It's good to see that the changes have been made. I think that makes a big difference from when we first looked at this. So from my perspective, I'm certainly prepared to support the application, so I propose.
Councillor Sokol.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Paul. And this application was different last time, mainly on the issue of flood risk, yeah? So applicant has responded to address the flood risk by removing at least two plots on there. I think we don't have any other reason to refuse this application. I think we should go along to a recommendation by officers, yeah, to approve it.
Are you seconding that?
I second it, yes.
I'm not putting it to the committee yet. I've got a representation left from Councillor Homewood.
Yeah, my concern was just in relation to the flood risk, and obviously there's one of the comments in the report is that the Environment Agency flood map is likely to change in spring 2020, and its suggestion is that the flood risk in that area is going to be increased. And I know obviously it's a live issue that we've had seen lots of flooding in parts of the country, and there's been lots of comment that a lot of those places that are flooding are on local plans for development. So it does provide a little bit of concern. I just wondered, in terms of the terrace properties, which I presume are the ones that are in that area where the flood risk may change, are those sort of ground floors, sort of habitable floors, or are they more sort of garage utility type spaces that might alleviate that potential problem for people purchasing those?
Through you, Chair, just on the point around the accommodation, yeah, on the lower ground floor, we've got, it is non-habitable. I'll just zoom in on that. So that's the lower ground floor, so you can see garage, utility, downstairs loo, stairs. We don't actually know at this moment in time how the flood risk, or the extent of the flood risk zone will pan out in terms of this site. That's for the Environment Agency. They're reviewing their modelling data that they've undertaken. All they're saying at this stage is that it may change, but for the purposes of determining this application, there is no objection from the Environment Agency.
Any further contributions? No? Oh, Councillor Uppel.
Yeah, I just want to. I think James makes some really good points in, and the Councillor Greaves has raised particular issues, obviously on plot 1 and 2. I do have a little bit of concern about that, given that the model's going to change, really, and I don't know. I'm just going to add that comment. I'm a little bit concerned about the flood risk for those 2 plots, really. And the other thing I just wanted to ask was about the sustainable transport. There's been 4,000 put aside for that, for metro cars. So if you could just give a little bit more reason as to why it's 4,000, how that links up with the bus stops and bus services.
Through you, Chair. It's essentially it's just under £500 per dwelling for a metro card, which would be for a bus for future residents. So that's just worked out. Basically £500 per dwelling to give us the 4,000 on this scheme. So they'd be made available for future residents just to promote bus use and sustainable travel measures, essentially.
If there are no more speakers, I'll put it to the committee then. It's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour of officer's recommendation, please show.
Application's approved.
Next page 41. Spurn Point, Manchester Road, Linthwaite.
Thank you, Chair. This application is brought forward to the subcommittee because of the size of the site. It's a housing allocation in the local plan, as you can see here. This is an aerial photo of the site. It's currently some commercial premises that are occupied by a textile machinery company. There's some industrial units, which are these, some offices next door, and then quite a large storage yard area. This part of the site's set down from Manchester Road, and then it levels out in the northern part, and it's gently sloping. It's pretty much flat. There's woodland which falls within the green belt to most sides, residential development on the opposite side of Manchester Road, and some houses just next door to the southwest. As I said, it's a housing allocation in the local plan with an indicative capacity for 22 dwellings. I'll just show you this photo as well. So this is a long-range photo showing the site nestled on the valley side just there. So it's this blue building, there the offices. So you can just see how it relates within the landscape. The proposal is an outline application for residential development with access the only matter that's been applied for. The proposed access is this single priority junction off Manchester Road. This indicative layout that you can see provides 35 dwellings comprising a mixture of apartments, semis and detached houses, although this layout is not under consideration at this stage. All members are considering today is the principle of residential development on the land and the proposed point of access. In terms of the officer assessment, this is quite a straightforward application. Is the principle of development acceptable? Yes, because the site's allocated for housing in the local plan. Is the point of access acceptable? How has development management have assessed it and consider it to be so? The applicants demonstrated acceptable swept paths and a number of highways related conditions are recommended. Officers are satisfied that all other issues can be addressed through conditions and through consideration of the specific details that reserve matters. This includes drainage, ecology, noise, contamination and planning obligations. It's therefore recommended that the application is approved. Thank you, Chair.
Members. Councillor Uppel.
Thank you for that. I know you're probably going to say this is not something to look at this stage, but I'm just a bit concerned about the objection that the lead flood authorities raised currently. And they're saying that it would be going from a less vulnerable classification to a more vulnerable classification because it's moving from commercial to residential. And obviously they've got their concerns about the surface water drainage proposals. Is this not something we would consider at all at outline stage? Because the flooding one seems a particular issue here from the authority.
This site's already been looked at in terms of flood risk when it went through the local plan process. It is low risk, flood zone 1, so starting point is that it's low risk. Issues around specific risk to properties will be looked at when layout's considered. So we'd put a condition on that when a reserve matters application comes in for layout, that includes all the relevant flood risk information and drainage information to enable the lead local flood authority to make a full assessment at that point. As it stands, all we're looking at is the question of, is residential development acceptable on this site? It's a local plan, housing allocation. So, yeah, I mean, it's addressed in the report, but yeah, it's acknowledged that they had raised some concerns.
Councillor Patrick and then Councillor Marchington.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Well, I'm not going to support this without that flood risk assessment in front of me. We've had a number of similar residential housing estates built in my ward in Holmfirth, and we've had serious flooding issues that the local planning authority has not been able to resolve. So there is no way I'm going to support this without that risk assessment in front of me. Thank you.
Well, let Councillor Marchington speak and then...
Yeah, thank you. I'm understanding the principle of this site being developed has been addressed with a local plan, but I'll address some issues I've talked about before, particularly with relation to Manchester Road, and there's issues around cumulative impact. We know there's a substantial development further west in the Colne Valley, which has gone through, they're concerned about, although the point of access onto Manchester Road might be acceptable, all of that traffic's going to add into issues along there. I don't know if it's been looked at, but again, we've got residential development on the opposite side of the road. I don't know what off-road parking is like for that, but again, with Manchester Road, you do get points where you get parking on both sides of the road. You've got industrial traffic going up and down. It does cause concerns. I think I just want to raise the issue about, and I'm not sure it's flooding necessarily. It's well above the level of the river, so I don't think flooding is an issue. It's the drainage is a significant issue that both Councillor Uppal and Councillor Patrick have both brought up. And I am having to deal with issues around flooding in elsewhere in the ward with areas with a similar topography, because although despite the fact there was a detailed drainage in place, it's not worked and it's had consequences that we weren't sure about. And again, you've got to be really careful in this part of Kirklees, and I should imagine it's the same in the Home Valley and the Colne Valley, that residential development disturbs previously established watercourses. It might be streams, it might be other things, and the flooding is not coming up from the lower level, it's actually where the water goes. And I've got at least, I think I've got 3 on the other side of the valley, houses, areas being flooded because of development that's taken place and affected watercourses. So I understand the principle of development. I would want to see a good drainage scheme which is going to mitigate against, look at what the existing watercourses, looks at the existing topography, particularly the fact we've got clay on millstone, and actually something that's going to make sure the water goes somewhere other than into people's homes. Probably, yeah, I mean, on the south side of the valley, it's probably going to be all right. It's those on the side, there's a potential for things to slide.
Thank you. Everything members are saying is completely justifiable, is necessary, but we aren't at the stage of looking at a layout. And until you're at the stage of looking at a layout, councillor, you aren't being asked to consider the detail. What you have in front of you is a set of planning conditions that require the detailed drainage scheme to come in. If I take you to your papers, page 47.12, you've got temporary drainage to deal with the construction period. You've got condition 11, detailed drainage with layout to be submitted. So that would be a matter that would inform the layout. So they can't get away with it. They won't get away with it. There is no, and I don't think the developers have any intention of trying to usurp any system. They're simply asking for the principle of housing on a housing allocation. You as a decision maker are entitled to say, what conditions do I want to impose to ensure that that principle is satisfied at the detailed layout stage? And that's what conditions are for. Conditions are for making development that would otherwise be unacceptable, acceptable. So you haven't got a layout before you. They're entitled to use the outline route to get a permission in principle. The detail follows in reserved matters, and that is another opportunity for the council, whether it be under the delegated route or up at this planning committee, to look at the specific layout and the details behind that layout, including the flood risk assessment. The FRA, the consultation from flood risk management, simply says they haven't had that information provided. That's fine. That's a good marker. They will get it when they get a layout, and that's the normal route of decision making. So it's simply, in principle, housing on a housing allocation. It's nothing more than that and that point of access. So I hope that clarifies matters.
Councillor Homewood.
Chair, I was just going to say that I'm happy to move the officer recommendation, just on the basis, I presume this will be the case, but that the next application will come back to the committee. I don't know whether it automatically will because of the size, but as long as we can have that so we can see the drainage.
Do you wish to?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but it must have a flood risk assessment. Quite clearly, it's saying it's more vulnerable under residential than it is currently, so that must happen.
It will happen. It will inform the reserved matters, and you'll see the detail of that.
Councillor Marchington and then Councillor Firth.
Yeah. Thank you, Matthias, for the comments. I'm particularly interested, it will be at a later stage, the details about temporary drainage during construction, because that is the issue we've got. And I don't remember, as having spent significant amounts of time at previous committees, actually saying, well, there's this, this heavy traffic on the site and stuff. We need to make sure the drainage is appropriate then, and that would be really useful. If that is something we're going to be able to do with future developments, and actually if it gives the planning authority a certain amount of control over when developers are doing stuff that's causing disruption to particularly neighbouring residents, if that allows us then to go in and say, look, you need to be doing something different because of what's happening, I sit as a ward councillor, as a member of the planning committee, would find that really useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, the thing is, it's all laid out here what they've done, but what they haven't done a flood risk assessment and any drainage issues. I know it's a flood zone 1, it's therefore obviously a very low risk of flooding, but that doesn't mean to say it isn't going to flood at some point. And being a member of the Environment Agency, it's one of my favourite things now is to look at flood zones and possibilities of flooding, because there's nothing worse than building a housing estate like we've had up in the Home Valley, whereby the water, when it rains, we get a flood. What's that?
Sorry, Don, I'm not going to go into this.
You made me jump. We get a flood. So the reason I'm asking this is, these people, if they're going to do a job properly, they should have done an assessment on the flood zone 1, even though we know water doesn't run uphill. It has a tendency to run downhill, and if it runs from the top down to the bottom, then you've got a problem. And we've had so many problems with flooding. Quite honestly, we don't want to be sticking our neck out and making further problems. If it had said flood risk assessment, fine, but it doesn't. And the drainage situation hasn't been sorted. So at the end of the day, we've got these problems. So could officers please tell me what their thoughts are on this and how they're going to be resolved before I say yes?
When the local plan was designed and conceived, there was an audit and an investigation of sites to inform whether they were suitable for their intended use in the local plan. So there is a level of understanding that in flood zone 1, yes, residential is sensitive, more vulnerable use, but they are compatible with each other. The detail of that the detailed layout will have to be informed by what the drainage strategy will be. So when you have a detailed application or a reserve matters on this site, that reserve matters will have a flood risk assessment document informing it, and the lead local flood authority will review it, and they will make a recommendation to say whether they're happy with the type of drainage scheme that they put in. And we don't know what that will be. It could be, if it's a soak-away scheme, if it's suitable, and if it's not, it'll be a pipe scheme with an attenuation, and it'll discharge to a watercourse. And that will all be agreed through the detail of the reserve matters that members here have asked to see. So from my mind, the debate is for the next committee when you're asked to look at a layout and make a decision to accept that layout has to be informed by flood risk. At this time, you're just being asked to almost confirm what the local plan already says and nothing more. So it's a bit of a moot point at the minute. That's my best advice, Councillor.
I mean, the thing is, you're asking us to agree to this, and then it's a horse before the cart situation, isn't it? Come on, you wanted us to say fine, and then about 3 or 4 weeks later, somebody's going to do a flood assessment, and maybe they'll say, "Oh, never mind, it's going to flood," but they've agreed to it anyway. This is what's happening,
Just to be clear, you aren't agreeing to anything other than confirming what the local plan already says this land can be used for. You're not agreeing a number of houses, a layout of houses, a type of houses. You're not even agreeing the internal estate road. You're just saying the point of access along Manchester Road that's identified on that plan in front of you on your screens, and the use of the land for housing and all the conditions that are attached to inform reserve matters. That's all you're doing today.
So what you're saying basically is that if we agree to this, see it through, and then the plan comes up and we don't like it, we can actually refuse it. Are you saying that?
I am saying that you will yes, if you think that the layout does not adequately address the flood risk matters, if you have an evidence-based position to disagree with either the statutory or non-statutory advice you get, then yes, you can make a decision based on your judgment as a planning authority that the layout hasn't adequately mitigated its flood risk impact. But you do that at reserve matters, at the detailed layout.
Councillor Davis and then Councillor Lawson.
Yeah, I believe you proposed. I'm willing to second that on the basis of the advice we've been given. I think it's now been very much clarified that this is in principle, and then there is that opportunity for us to make sure that we enforce the correct layout and drainage, because I absolutely agree with the comments that have been made around flooding and drainage. So on that basis, I'm prepared to second.
Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. It's really just a point on conditions and the ones on the remediation. There's a suite of remediations that are going to be recommended going forward into the reserve matters. I think I might not be on that committee, but I think it's important that they're in full. They need to be in full because, to my mind, they may affect a viability of the project going forward. So I think this committee probably needs to see what that suite of things looks like, just because that at the end there may be some decisions to be made about 106 and negotiations on viability. So just make that comment. Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please show. Against?
Three against.
No abstentions, no.
Application is approved.
Page 49, and it's 345 Bradley Road, Bradley.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Emma Thompson. I'm the Planning Officer presenting this to you today. Members have a full report in front of them and have had the benefit of a site visit this morning. The application is brought to committee at the request of Councillor Uppel for the reasons outlined in the report. Before showing the current proposals that have been submitted, it's considered relevant to outline the history of the site as follows. An application to extend the existing bungalow was submitted for consideration in 2018. The initial proposals are shown here on slide 1. These represent a significant increase to the existing bungalow. The plans also submitted at the time showed a large L-shaped detached garage. Officers could not support these proposals and negotiated revisions. The amended details provide a first floor increasing the existing bungalow generously. These plans were subsequently approved. An application was then submitted earlier this year proposing to replace the existing dwelling with a large 2-storey property. This is shown in slide 4. This represented an increase similar in scale to the original plan submitted in 2018 and was considered unacceptable for the same reasons insofar as the development would be out of scale and out of character with the area, in addition to being overbearing for adjoining occupants. Officers entered into negotiations again with the agent and the plans were revised. This slide shows the scheme that is subject of this application to be considered by members. Permission is sought for the demolition of the existing bungalow and the erection of a large 2-storey property. The footprint is 11 metres wide and almost 16 metres deep, located 3 metres from the boundary with its neighbour, number 343. As referred to in your report at 10.7, whilst the overall height is reduced by just under a metre when compared to the approved extension scheme, the eaves height is greater, resulting in an increase to the scale. Again, a detached garage has also been included within this scheme. The materials proposed are stone and render. The street view submitted shows the existing, approved and proposed schemes. It shows relative heights across the site frontage, but it does not demonstrate the resulting scale and mass of the development, particularly when viewed from side and rear adjoining land. Members should note that the side comparisons are not an accurate reflection and should not form part of the assessment, so we're just looking at the street scene views. So going back to the scheme. Any redevelopment of the site should promote good design by ensuring the form, scale and layout respects and enhances the character of the townscape. Taking into account the mixed character of the area, it's considered that the replacement 2-storey dwelling could be designed meeting the requirements of the local plan. The scheme to extend, approved in 2018, achieves just that. Whilst the plans have been revised, it's not considered that these address officer concerns, and as such, the development cannot be supported. The Council have been consistent with its advice following the original 2018 submission, which addressed concerns taking into account the context and impact on nearby occupants. The current details show a dwelling that is considered out of scale, massing and design with its neighbours, nor is it considered to enhance the street scene, contrary to policies in the local plan. Furthermore, the replacement dwelling will be out of scale and mass that would detrimentally impact on neighbouring occupants. The side elevations are significantly increased both in depth and height, as can be seen in the proposed plans. As a consequence, the development would be overbearing and overshadowing. As such, the development is recommended for refusal for the reason outlined in the update. Nothing further to add, Chair.
We have 3 speakers for this one. We have Mr. Stephen Miller, who objects to the application.
Thank you, Chair. The planning history of the site has been shown by the planning officer there. The concerns we had was, again, the massing and the impact on the street view and the neighbouring occupants. Although we're not happy with the plans at the time, we were happy for the sympathetic alteration to the bungalow, which, after some negotiating, was agreed. But after 1 year, new plans were submitted, like the planner said, to demolish and rebuild, and this was our major concern. Point two, the visual impact of the development, which again the planning officer has said is the proposed replacement dwelling by reason of its site in scale and design would result in an overbearing impact to the detriment of the neighbours, occupants, in addition to forming an overly prominent incongruous feature within the street scene and to the detriment of the visual amenity of the area. And one of the other concerns is in the recent planning application is the lowering of the ground level by approximately 0.5 metre, which one of the concerns is what impact will this have on the foundation of the properties either side. And one of the other concerns is it would be out of character of the street scene lowering it by that much. And that's our concerns. And I'm sorry, I'm speaking on behalf of all the objectors that have put their proposals. Thank you.
We have Mr. Yousaf, who's the applicant. Sorry, you.
So if it's okay with you, Chair, I'll speak first.
Okay, so that's Malcolm Sizer.
Thank you, Chair. As I understand it, Emma Thompson said that the side elevation comparison drawing was inaccurate. Is that correct, Emma?
Through you, Chair, yeah, that part of the submission is inaccurate by about 0.5 metre to 1 metre.
Right, on that basis, Chair, could I ask on behalf of my client that the application's deferred at this meeting? We weren't aware of that being an issue. Obviously, we'll review what we've submitted and bring it back to the next meeting, hopefully.
Well, certainly I'll put that to the members. If they're agreeable to that, then that will be the case. So, can I say that? Is that moved and seconded? Would somebody? You're prepared to move that, Councillor Sokol? Is that seconded?
I move, Mr. Chair, to defer it there for the next.
I'll second that.
You're seconding that. All those in favour of deferment?
Just to bring back the plan.
Please show.
Sorry, just one sec. So we've got Councillor McGuinn.
Against? 3. There's no.
Can we just clarify that, to bring back that? Can we just say that the deferral is in respect of providing an accurate plan?
Yep.
Resubmit.
Yep.
Thank you.